My name is Mohammed Arham, and I'm a Seed 3 intern, and my project has been the Early Educator Space. So, this is embarrassing. All right, so the Early Educator Space was a project brought forth by the BHA, also known as the Boston Housing Authority. So, a quick little background on what the BHA is it's a public housing agency that was founded in 1935. So what a public housing agency does is it helps residents get more affordable housing and works with the government to sort of distribute grants and things like that. And it is the largest of its kind in New England, housing over 16,000 residents in Boston. And one fact that I wanted to sort of highlight because it's very central to my project is that around 3,000 of the 16,000 residents in Boston are between the ages of 0 and 13 years old. Oh, okay. And so what is the Early Educator Space? So the Early Educator Space is a project that's placed in the West Broadway housing community. So this is a public housing community owned by the BHA in South Boston. And it houses over 200 residents under the age of 13. And that number is actually for one of the smaller courtyards that you see in West Broadway. So the actual plot that I was working on this summer was plot W1. So you can see it's directly connected to West 7th Street and is also adjacent to the church. And sort of the core of this project has been redesigning the courtyards in between these apartment buildings and making them very friendly to children because there are a lot of those in these projects. So the mission statement for this project was the BHA is interested in exploring design solutions for the collection of outdoor courtyards at the site that promote climate resilience, sustainability, and intergenerational use. So, like I mentioned before, the space has a lot of young people, but it also has a lot of senior citizens and then a lot of the people in between that. So, what we wanted to make sure in our design was that everybody can sort of fulfill their needs for the space without like blocking off a certain group with the design choice. And then climate resilience and sustainability comes from the materials that are being used in the designs and the ways that things are being built. So I wanted to start with some site analysis. So zooming out to South Boston, as you can see, it's a place that is predominantly white with sizable African American and Hispanic population. Uh, and then sort of zooming back into West Broadway, you can see that uh, within West Broadway, the percentile of people of color is a lot higher, is sizably higher than the rest of South Boston. Uh, and then moving to low income, it's also unique in that sense. Same with unemployment rate. And then also another thing that they're unique in within South Boston is the asthma rates. So this might seem like sort of a strange statistic to put up, but so what this is supposed to show is that asthma is often an indicator of poor housing conditions and environmental factors such as pollution. And so sort of combining all of these different statistics, you can see that West Broadway is a community that is like uniquely in need within South Boston. And so one way we can sort of do that is by building playgrounds for kids. Moving on to some circulation. West Broadway is very well connected to the surrounding areas in Greater Boston as a whole. As you can see, it's a very short walk away to the Broadway T station, and there are multiple bus stops that allow for very easy access to different areas around Boston. And then moving on to zoning, you can see that there's a really big industrial zone next to West Broadway. And as I mentioned before with the asthma statistics, environmental pollution can sort of play into that. And so things like the really large MBTA train yard right next to it and the industrial zone can sort of contribute to that. And then to the right of West Broadway, there's a lot more residential with commercial zones sort of in between those two. So moving on to some scale comparisons of the actual courtyard in W1, you can see that uh, the space in the two existing green plots is pretty small compared to some other Boston play spaces. It's most comparable to the Rose Kennedy Greenway Park in Chinatown, which you might be familiar with. So, sort of, this was definitely a challenge to implement a lot of programming elements in a very like constrained space without making it too overfilled. And these are some photos of the existing site. As you can see currently, there's a very strong lack of programming. And the only like child like play element that right now exists is this slide, which you can see is really sad and unkempt. And I don't think I saw a single kid touch it or go near it on my site visits. And there's also a lot of like really harsh concrete infrastructure, such as these seating areas that are just really uninviting. And also in the background of this picture, there's better pictures later, but there's some like concrete courtyards that are supposed to be used for seating or things like that, but they're also not very good. And they're not like the vibe that we want to make the early educator space have. So after my site visits, I created this collage to sort of encapsulate the things that I was feeling and some of the like specific elements that I wanted to highlight from the current site. So as you can see, one good thing about the site that I noticed was that it's very well shaded. And so this is something we wanted to play off of. And some other things I wanted to highlight were the slide. There's also a lot of defunct spaces around it, like laundry racks that people in the community have sort of reused as just storage spaces. But so moving forward, we might want to create actual storage spaces instead of having them use spaces that aren't supposed to be meant for that and that just are unused originally. And then you also have in the back, you can see the chain link gate. So safety is a big concern because obviously we're creating a space for children. So one thing with the chain link gate is that a lot of people break through it and drive their cars into the interior of the courtyard, which is definitely not something we want. So that's something I'm going to address in my design. And the last thing I wanted to highlight with this was, again, the intergenerationalness of the space. So you have a lot of young kids, a lot of old people, a lot of everything in between. So next, I'm going to be moving on to community engagement. So this was all done by the Sasaki team with Northeastern and the BHA. And so what they did was they surveyed residents in West Broadway to see what sort of programming elements they would want to see in EES 2.0. And as you can see, the numbers sort of correspond to how many votes a certain play element got. So things that are high up on their list are things like a splash pad, swings, arts and crafts, and a workout station. And there are a lot of others, and these are sorted into maintenance groups. So how difficult something is to maintain over a long period of time. And then using these different programming elements, the Sasaki team created this concept that sort of mashed together a lot of those elements, like a play structure. You can see the splash pad, a mud kitchen, while also adding things like bushes to close off the space and make it feel more intimate. So after seeing all of this, I'm going to be moving on to what I designed. So starting with the existing site, some of the things I definitely wanted to remove were things like these really like brutalist seating areas and these concrete little mini courtyards that I saw. And one thing I wanted to do was make the periphery of the two main triangular green plots really open concept because I didn't feel that there was a need to sort of close off circulation and sort of waste space, in my opinion. And so these precedent images sort of show what the feeling of what I wanted the feeling of the space to be like. One thing I noticed while reading through the community engagement was people wanted a lot of like nature play and like sort of natural elements. And then other things they wanted was seating, spaces to read, hang out with friends, work. And so I thought that incorporating nature into a lot of the elements like the play structures and seating areas would be sort of killing two birds with one stone and sort of making the whole space feel really unified and friendly to children and just a lot nicer in general. So these are some process sketches. They're kind of grainy. I'm sorry for that. But so these were the original sort of like ideas I had for the space. Originally, I wanted to combine the two green spaces to sort of just maximize space. And then you can see there's a lot more trees on the outside in my designs. This is another one. You can see I started playing with terrain as a play structure. So how can you like create play elements for kids that aren't very like unidirectional, like the unidirect, that are like the slide that already exists on the space. There's like mainly one way that the designer wanted the children to interact with it, just like climb up, slide down. But so I wanted to work on more like multifaceted play elements. And then once again, incorporating the nature, you can see the tree stumps and just like hills and dips and things like that. And then these are some of my later sketches. As you can see, these are a lot cleaner. They're a lot. I sort of used the same sort of bush strategy that the Sasaki team used to close off the space, make it easier to like watch your kid because the kid doesn't want to run off. It's an enclosed space. There's a lot of like a lot nicer seating areas outside the two green spots. And then this was the design I ended up moving forward with. This has the two areas still split, but it uses a central like arch structure to unify the spaces and make it feel like one moment. And so that has like a climbing element. So it's also like multifaceted, like I mentioned before. Kids can use it to climb. There's also meant to be like misting like nozzles inside. So one thing that was a problem with the original Sasaki concept was that an element like a splash pad, even though it was very highly requested, wasn't really the best fit for plot W1 since it's a very like shaded, quiet courtyard, and it's also not the most central choice. So a thing like a splash pad could go into a more central courtyard, so people from the entire West Broadway community could more easily access it. So, but I still wanted to implement some sort of like water element. So I thought a mister would be really nice. And then here you can also see like the terrain play structure still remains. And yeah. So this was the final site plan for my design. As you can see, like I mentioned, the hills, there's a play structure that is actually a play cube play structure similar to the one in Chinatown from one of the precedents. So these are like multifaceted play structures. There's a lot of ways to interact with them. There's a tree stump like climbing structure. And one thing I wanted to do was do a lot of inward facing seating areas on the green plots. So it's really easy for a caregiver to supervise their children while also these bushes and seating areas also block off the main routes into the courtyard. And one thing this does is it disincentivizes people with cars to just drive in because it doesn't look as open and inviting for a vehicle and or strangers. And there's also designated storage areas, which is another thing the community really wanted. Moving on to circulation. The primary circulation remains the same as it did originally. One thing that is different is secondary circulation paths were removed. And since the periphery is very open concept now, it's very easy to get from your door to outside of West Broadway or to inside the parks. So these are experience maps. So it's essentially how I would want or how like a user is supposed to a user is going to use the space. So I'm going to start with how a kid who is like the main audience is going to use the space. So let me just walk you through like a little story. So the kid, it's like a nice sunny day. He comes out his house. He has a lot of energy. Uh, he uses like the tree stump climbing structure, the slide, sort of expends some of that energy. Moves to the misting structure because he's like hot and he's sweating, and it feels nice. And then he goes over to the other side using the sort of pathways, and then he can like rest on one of the mounds. And sort of concurrently with that, there's the caregiver who's the red line. So they come out, they sit down, they can watch their kid really easily. There's an inward facing bench. They can also move to the other side very easily because it's very open. Well, it's open where it needs to be. And so they can also watch their kid really easily there. And then the third sort of user I was imagining was This can be like a teen or like a senior or someone who just wants to use the space to like relax, eat, work, spend time with friends. So I think spaces that are sort of suited for that sort of use is around the green plots. So you have a lot of seating areas that are well shaded. But then you can also just move into one of the interior seating areas, and you can also use the mounds. The mounds are sort of for everyone. You can use them as a play structure or just to like rest. This is a little section view to better illustrate the space. You can see the central passageway with the arch, the benches, and things like that. And finally, I wanted to end off with this collage. This was made by the team at Sasaki with my design, and it sort of illustrates what the vibe of ES 2.0 can be. So really fun, really safe for kids, very engaging in many different ways. It's made for a community to sort of congregate and come together and enjoy their time together. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Sorry for everyone online. I was saying that I thought that it was very thoughtful the way he incorporated like the caregiver and the child experience, because that is very difficult sometimes when you're, like having to be in a space where necessarily it's not made for you as an adult. It's only for the child or the other way around. So it's really, really awesome that that's incorporated. And the drawings were really, really great. And just the like, creating that connectivity between the sites through a like really intentional play structure was really, really awesome.
Yeah, so for seasonality, obviously I think I didn't really dive into materials and what types of like planting is going to be done, but we'd want things that sort of adapt to the seasons well, are hardy and resilient to the climate, and things like in the fall they can be really beautiful with like flowers and changing leaves and things like that. And also like the misting structure probably wouldn't function uh, all year round, but it would be best suited for like the summer. Uh, but yeah. Sorry if that didn't really answer your question.
Anyone else? Any other comments from the audience here?
Just in case. Arham, this has been an amazing project, and I think, and I'm Kim Lucas, I'm part of the BHA team. And I think this is a very cool thing in that we, by the end of our time as design grantees, came out of this process with like, oh, this is what folks said, this is what it could be. And you have taken it into like a whole nother dimension for us to be able to really visualize. And so as we move forward with this project and understanding how do we bring this back to the West Broadway community, and how does this like, this is going to be super cool for them to hopefully see their thoughts turned into something like, oh my God, that's what you meant by like, oh, we said splash pad, but misting feature. Interest, like, right? Like, and I'm so excited to bring this back to folks at West Broadway, see what they think, and just kind of move forward. You're really bringing this to a place where folks can actually tangibly visualize and see their ideas come into, like, this is legit their space. And so like, that's pretty awesome. Thank you so much for the work.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sophia. I'm a C3 intern, and my project is designing public kitchen prototypes for DS4SI. So let's jump straight into the client. DS4SI is DS4SI stands for Design Studio for Social Intervention, as you can tell by the name, they are a design studio and nonprofit that creates public events, programs, and workshops that engages the Boston community with different social issues that they should address. So here are some events that they've done in the past. And as you can see, they've addressed some certain issues in Boston, like, for example, police brutality, the importance of artistic union in the city, and also problems with public infrastructure like the MBTA. So really their goal is to like host events and programs that can bring social change to different communities. So their current and ongoing program is called Public Kitchen, and as you can tell, it is in short a program that invites community members to come together and cook. So some elements of what they do at this program is cooking food together, obviously, sharing recipes, engaging in conversations about food and the importance of shared spaces in public kitchens, and of course, enjoying food. Now, the overarching goal of Public Kitchen is to allow community members to come together and imagine how their community would benefit from having a permanent kitchen like this installed in their neighborhood. So really seeing the benefits for that and really experiencing it. Now, let's talk about my role about this project. So currently, Public Kitchen is a short-term program that's running from July to October, but DS4SI hopes to bring it long-term and hopefully in the end, make it a permanent structure. So my role in this project is to help DS4SI redesign Public Kitchen, to improve their current design structure, and also to give possible ways that they can run this like in the future. Yeah. So let's go straight into site analysis. So as you can see, both DS4SI and Public Kitchen are in two different places, but they're both located in Upham's Corner, Dorchester, and they're situated across Columbus Road, which is a very busy main street in Upham's Corner, but it's also very accessible through bus and also commuter rail. And so as you can see through the legend, both DS4SI and Public Kitchen are located in the commercial area of Upham's Corner, but it's also accessible through the residential areas here and also over there across there. So something I took a look at that I thought was important was community spaces, because both DS4SI and Public Kitchen are community programs. And as you can see here with the highlighted blue, there's not many community spaces, and I define community spaces as like free to all people shared space that people can come together. And the majority of places in Upham's Corner are actually churches and also like gardens and like the One Strand Theater. So this really highlighted the importance of DS4SI, because it really is like the sole community space in Upham's Corner that consistently brings events that are meant to be for the public. The next thing I looked at was food insecurity and SNAP participation. And so this data was taken from the Massachusetts Food Systems Map in 2018. And as you can see in both diagrams, Upham's Corner faces some pretty high levels of food insecurity, around 17 to 26% in that corner in the more saturated area. And then for SNAP participation, around 14 to 24% in that section. And something to note is that this data was in 2018, so this is pre-COVID. And according to the Food Project, during COVID and also post-COVID, food insecurity levels and also SNAP participation actually doubled, so around from 8% to around 18 to 20%. So you can imagine that these numbers are probably higher than they were before. I also looked at demographics. And as you can tell, Upham's Corner is very multicultural, but some ethnicities that were highlighted in their business profile are Puerto Rican, Dominican, Haitian, Cape Verdean, Irish, West Indian. And these are all ethnicities that I think can be represented in Public Kitchen in terms of like ingredients and the foods that are being cooked and offered, and languages as well. Some other demographics that I looked at that were also taken from the business district profile was that 64% of households in Upham's Corner are family, compared to 46% citywide. So Upham's Corner is a very family-centered neighborhood, and I think that's something that DS4SI can address. Another thing is that 52% of Upham's Corner residents speak a language other than English, and that's primarily Spanish. So again, that's something that also DS4SI can consider and also think about the design. And then I also looked at the median income of Upham's Corner, which is 40K compared to Boston overall, which is 89K. So let's get into Public Kitchen. So as I mentioned before, Public Kitchen is in a building. It's on 545 Columbus Road. And although the space itself is pretty small, there's a lot that goes on in it. So to the left, you can see here, there's the Public Kitchen structure itself, and that's used for cutting, cooking, preparing foods together that people come together with. There's also free to use ingredients and pots and pans that people can come and take to cook whatever they plan on cooking. But then there's also a community aspect. So there's dining table, there's a bunch of outdoor seating, and there's also like a bookshelf where people can share recipes and just read recipe books. So it's a really community oriented space, although it is pretty compact. And here is a video just for you to like visualize the space. Oh wait, and I forgot to mention, I have a model of the space here, which I can pass around. So a few weeks ago, we visited the soft launch and hard launch of Public Kitchen, and it was a really cool experience just to see what it's like and to interact with residents in the neighborhood and also just cook food, eat food. We had salads, bread. It's actually really good. But in that time, I also wanted to engage with the community and ask them about things about Public Kitchen that they liked and maybe want to have changed. So I asked a couple people during the soft and hard launch things like, what do you like about Public Kitchen now that you're experiencing it? Is there anything you'd like to change? And then also, what do you think about public shared spaces in general? And overall, people really liked Public Kitchen and they didn't have anything they wanted to change. They really liked the way it currently operates. But there was an emphasis on diversity with the ingredients provided in like kitchenware, stuff like that. But overall, people agreed that they liked Public Kitchen and they also agreed and saw the benefit for it, which I totally agree with as well. Now, while people didn't really have things they wanted to change, I saw some observations that I thought could be improved upon when visiting. First being the Public Kitchen structure is very small. As I mentioned before, it's a multi-use space for cooking, prepping, washing, everything. So when there's about like 12, 15 people in one space, it causes a lot of congestion and not everyone can cook if they wanted to. On that same note, not all tools were fully utilized. So for example, the Public Kitchen structure had a stove and we all didn't use any like cooking. We didn't use any heating. We made salads. So that was just some space that could have been used for more prepping space, but wasn't because it was already built in the structure. And then third of all, when I was visiting, there were some people who came in who were a bit hesitant to join, mainly because they didn't know exactly how to join and what was going on. So that was, again, another design consideration for me. So how can I engage more people and they can figure out like, how can I join? How can I be a part of this? And then fourth, Public Kitchen itself is very spontaneous. So there's constantly ingredients came in. Lots of people are cooking different dishes. Lots of people are just doing new things. And so that was another design consideration. Should I embrace the spontaneity or should I add a form of organization for that? So those were all my considerations. Now let's get on to my designs. So this is currently how the current Public Kitchen layout is. And as you can see here, it's pretty well organized. DS4SI did a great job at like finding the different areas that can be used for cooking and also community spaces and stuff like that. But when you take a look at the site circulation, you can see that there is a lot of congestion within the sink and the kitchen like module itself, because as I mentioned, it's pretty small space. Lots of people are trying to cook and things like that. So I decided that both the kitchen module and the sink were the two pain points that cause all this congestion within the site when people were interacting with it. Again, for those same reasons, they're both multi-use, and with a lot of people interacting, there's not enough space to accommodate for everyone. So now addressing the Public Kitchen module, it is a space that's used for prepping ingredients, cooking food, and also plating food and other miscellaneous steps. So when I observed Public Kitchen and saw the spontaneity of it, I was inspired and thought to break down this module into three that takes into consideration those three steps of cooking. So the first one being prepping ingredients. So this space is like a rolling module that is just purely for preparation. So there's a spot that's available for storage for cutting boards and also like other miscellaneous things like plates, bowls, and stuff like that. There's also a like spot that can be extended out if there needs to be extra space. And the materials I decided for this were stainless steel because that's the like industry standard for commercial kitchens, and then also oak wood because it's antibacterial and heat resistant. Now, kind of similar to the first module, this is sort of the heating cooking one with the same materials, and they something to note about this is that it's there's no built-in stove. It's just electric stoves on top, or butane stoves, which no, do not use those. That's not good for indoors. It's not sustainable. But basically the concept is if people want to cook, they can use this module, plug it into an outlet and use the electric stove. However, if people aren't cooking, they can just take it away. And this again can be used for more prepping space for ingredients. That's the concept. And then the third one is just like a miscellaneous like central module that can be used for anything. So the idea was like having it as like an ingredient washing space since there wasn't that one initially, and just like more places for people to like collect their things, prep things, and stuff like that. So now in terms of the sink, DS4SI mentioned that they did have challenges with figuring out a way to make sure that their kitchenware are fully sanitized and can be used for everyone since so many people are using it. And so what I looked into was the way restaurants tackle this issue, and that's through a system called the 3-compartment sink, which is pretty self-explanatory, but it's basically like people put in their dirty dishes here and it removes debris, then they rinse it out with water, and then they sanitize with bleach or other sanitizing solutions. So this is something that I think DS4SI should invest in, because when more and more people will be interacting with the site, they need to ensure that the plates and stuff are clean. So with all that together, here kind of shows the possibilities of how you can arrange the site based on the different modules. So you could have 3 of them and it can be arranged in a row. You can have them to the side, like almost like an H structure, or like even a circular path, like, or diagram. Like, it's all pretty much up to DS4SI, and that's sort of the point. So if they wanted like a smaller event, they can do this, or if they wanted a larger one, they can do that. It's really up to them. And when you look at the circulation, it kind of also forms something interesting, because you can have one that can be almost like circulatory or one that's more linear. It can really accommodate for like any sort of space or event that they're trying to host. And so with all that being in mind, here's a render of the space. Thank you, Jaritza. Here are some ways that public kitchen could be configured. So for example, with this current layout, this could be an opportunity for like cultural cuisine nights, that people can come together, cook food, and then eat together in that central table. They could reduce that, make it smaller, and have it be hosting for family cooking classes, since Upham's Corner is a very family-centered community. Again, they can also do things like youth cooking classes, senior social lunches, and also they could make it smaller and arrange it in rows, almost like a classroom, kind of like here right now, and have it be educational, so like food waste reduction workshops or things like health and nutrition classes. So the possibilities are basically endless based on the different configurations of the module. So now I'm going to go into some details and suggestions, just really tiny ones that I have for the way Public Kitchen can operate. So the first one being, as I mentioned before, having a form of organization. So I think the second people come into the space, there should be a sign-up board that people can just see what's going on and what's being prepped. So for example, let's say I come in and I want to make fruit salad. So I can just write that there like, hi, I'm Sophia, and I think I want around 3 people to help me, or 2 people to help me make this fruit salad. And then people can come and just write it. So like, let's say Divine wants to, volunteer and make fruit salad with me. Another thing that I wanted to address was also common allergens, since that was something that wasn't talked about when I visited. So with this sign-up sheet, people can mention or have like magnets that show that they're going to be handling certain ingredients like peanuts or shellfish or stuff like that, because that's very important, and we don't want people to get allergic to things. And then again, as people mentioned before during my community engagement, people wanted a more diverse variety of dishes being prepared, and like ingredients and stuff like that. So I looked into cookware that DS4SI can have, and I'm not sure if they have it currently, but I think that it would be a nice addition to have. The first one being a rice cooker, because hundreds of cultures eat rice, and it would just make the cooking process so much easier. Second being pressure cooker for the same reason, and it also just speeds up the cooking process. Tortilla press, skillet pans, and then also a toaster oven or a convection oven, since there wasn't an opportunity for that with the public kitchen module. So lastly, I'm going to talk about a future public kitchen idea, and that is to expand public kitchen to outdoors. Now, obviously, if that were to happen, there's going to be lots of logistics that need to happen, like water source, electricity source, park permits, space permits, things like that, which I was planning on hashing out, but I unfortunately couldn't because I was like sick for 3 weeks. But something that I think DS4SI could really hone in on is collaboration with local organizations like farmers markets or food festivals. So having them in tandem with those events, so that people, first of all, there can be more traffic with public kitchen, but also people can have direct access to fresh ingredients, and also maybe DS4SI can have access to a water source or electricity source and things like that. And here's just a really, really quick conceptual model that I built for an outdoor kitchen. And it was inspired by the British Red Cross, and they created a pop-up kitchen for refugee and asylum seekers. And the concept is like it comes together as like almost a mini house that can be towed away like by a car and can be made anywhere. And so the kind of idea is that like it kind of comes together with the shade structure comes together like an accordion style, and just like all folds together nice and pretty and can be transported anywhere. So that's just a concept that I had for there, just an idea. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Thanks. Oh, yes, Divine.
Things like allergens and things like that, because maybe that wasn't fully considered. But have you thought of like how would so it seems like a pretty popular place already. So are they looking into like bringing more people in or
Oh yeah. So that was yeah, basically Divine asked like Public Kitchen is a very popular event and how are they planning on bringing more people? And so I would say they haven't really fully said, but I'm sure like they would want more and more people to interact. And this is something I forgot to mention in my presentation, but basically the way Public Kitchen currently operates, around 5 to 7 people maximum can be engaging with the Public Kitchen module that I noticed. But with my like different setup modules, there can be like maximum around 12 to 14 people. So that doubles when you have more of that like design thing. I don't know if that answered your question, but like that design sort of hopefully helps more people be able to participate with Public Kitchen. Yeah. Stephanie?
I really like the modularity of everything. I think that that's like a challenge for a lot of places, is like to like you make the spaces like, you know, productive and use it at its full capacity. And I think that like I think an example here is also like for the Fab Lab. Jay's talked about that a lot, with like things being movable and shifted around, and having the ability to have so many reconfigurations is really, really creative and opens up a lot more opportunity for interaction.
Thank you.
Hi, Sophia. This is Melissa and Noemi from DS4SI. First, thank you so much for the work that you did. I can't believe you were sick for 3 weeks. You did so much, and we're so grateful for all of your different analyses of the Public Kitchen. I feel like for us, it's just really inspiring to see all the work that you do. Like, we are so in the weeds every day, you know, and I feel like seeing the different questions you're raising, the way that you're looking at the site, it's really inspiring, and it helps offer like that really crucial step back and imagination work that is needed to make this better. So thank you so much. We really also appreciated the I don't know what it's called, but the flow through the space, really showing, I think, the chaos that we feel sometimes in this really small space. And thank you for also creating the 3 different arrangements of the different food prep stations. I think it's really cool to see all the different possibilities that we weren't able to see like in such a small space. So thank you again. We really, really appreciate the work that you've done this summer.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maryam. I'm also a Seed 3 intern, and this is my project is in collaboration with Ayni Institute. Okay. So Ayni Institute is located in Revere, Massachusetts, and it's a movement, training, and cultural center. And they invest their time in leaders and organizations that strive to build a world of I'm just not going to pronounce it. They provide quality trainings for world-class leaders and collaborate with other nonprofits, such as Neighbors United for a Better East Boston. And they are community organizers, movement practitioners, and community leaders. And a lot of their work includes research, training, coaching, and project incubation, with a focus on social movement and integrational Indigenous wisdom. So a lot of their institute is inspired by Indigenous peoples. So this is just a collage I had in the beginning of my project that just helped me inspired and think more into how I can create my design. And so this is the symbol. It represents the Ayni logo is the shape of a chacana, and it's a sacred symbol used by many indigenous groups and nations in South America. The ends of a chacana represent the 4 main stars of the Southern Cross and constellations only visible from the southern hemisphere of the world. Okay. So at the beginning, I site analysis of the site, which is Ayni Institute is located right there, and it's close to both Rumney Marsh, the Revere Middle School, and the high school, also and is located in a very residential area and commercial area. And one aspect of the site that I noticed, since a lot of the struggle of the site is being recognizable on the recognizable for people passing by, it's located right next to American Legion Highway, which is a very busy traffic and speedy highway. And the site is located only accessible through the highway or through a one-way that is also only accessed by the rotary or however you want to get there. Luckily, it is very accessible to many bus stops, and the commuter rail and the blue line is very nearby. So it makes it very accessible for different people in the community. I analyzed different demographics of the area that represent or connect to the Institute's goals. And so the site is located in an area with a lot of 95 to 100th percentile of people with less than a high school diploma, as well as limited English speaking, which helps Ayni notice or engage with their community and connects with their goals. It's also located in a very traffic induced area, so accessing the building accessing the building was a big struggle for me, and having a way to recognize the building was one of our goals during this project. So this is the current exterior. That's the front side of the building. As you can see, the big fields and the high school in the back. And this is the back side of the building. One of the struggles that we were facing is the slope of the area makes the bottom floor completely have only exits on the back and an entrance through the inside of the building. And it also limits the amount of natural light that is entered through that on that floor. So one of the other goals I had is to make this building recognizable, since, as you could tell from the outside when you're passing by, you don't really recognize or know what it is unless you have to go in and figure it out yourself. So we're gonna work. This is the current interior. So Ayni also spends a lot of time having large training sessions that currently don't fit as many people as they hope to. And so my goal is to be able to create a space that is modular and open for when they have large events or training sessions. During these training sessions, they have big spaces of people, and they later separate into small breakout spaces. So that was another goal for me, is to create a more structural and modular space for breakout sessions. These images over here show, bottom ones are the basement floor, as you could tell, has a lot of plumbing looking things and limited natural light. An obstacle we also have was these large columns located every single floor, and they really limit the space, as certain here, for where they can visibility. So anyone sitting behind that pole would struggle being able to see the presenter. So this is the current floor plan for the basement. It's a large open space, and I had to do a lot of research on code to figure out how many people you can fit. So the current floor plan, you're not allowed to fit more than 49 people, and it currently has a temporary storage and a mechanical room. The first floor is the main floor where people enter when they enter from right here, and the only accessibility is a lift and a staircase. And so this brings you into the big open space, which currently doesn't have much furniture, and it's just an open space. And we have a room up here and an under the stairs storage, which is used a lot. And then the second floor, which is mainly private space, office space for anyone that's working there, anyone that is working with the organization. And it consists of teamwork space, conference space, and individual workspace. And it has one enclosed office with a lot of crammed storage, so it makes it really hard to have more storage space. So one of my other goals is to be able to create more storage space that's more structural to allow for all that. And there's also bookshelves just all around through this floor. So a lot of the obstacles I was facing: zoning, which I mentioned, a lot of these I mentioned, the building format and structure, which it's built in a weird, strange way, but yeah, that was one of the struggles. And having a large open space for 80 to 100 people, which I later found out that is not possible to have that many people legally on per floor, which I'll talk about that later. And it's also located on a slope, and yeah. So one of the struggles I spent a while trying to understand is building code. So for the basement floor, since there's only one exit, legally not allowed to have more than 49 people unless, I don't know if I'm using this in the right context, with more, you have to have 2 means of egress to be able to allow for 2 emergency exits, and that gave us a chance to have more people on that floor. So I worked to incorporate that in my design. So yeah. For my improvements on that floor, throughout the whole building, was ideas that I had were to extend the back of the building for an open space, as well as to allow for 2 means of egress on the bottom floor, as well as having more enclosed conference spaces that can double as breakout space, and all that. So this is my final plan for my first floor. This is a more rendered image, but the floor plan consists of, when you enter the building, you enter into a modular seating space with a library area and a large training space that can be multi-purposeful, whether or not there is training, if there's not, and a smaller storage area that was able to fit 60 chairs stacked up, which are all placed here. As well as I changed the doors, which were originally over here, but moving them to the side allowed for a more space here to make a walkway, as well as possible furniture. I also, with the extension, we were able to add a larger conference space / breakout space, which is helpful for training sessions. When you separate into separate groups, we have 2 breakout spaces on that floor. This is a map of the circulation where public and private, yeah. So usually the yellow is public, so anyone that randomly decides that enters the building, it just shows the circulation of where they would go, while the red represents where more private or people working there are allowed, including going up the stairs and storage and stuff like that. Okay, so this is a rendering of the entrance of the building. So once you first enter, you enter into a lounge space that can also multi-purposeful for breakout spaces, as well as a library area. There was originally bookshelves on the top floor, and we were thinking of incorporating them or bringing them downstairs to have, well, the public, so the public can have access to different books. For training sessions, large sets of chairs or different types of chairs that might, I saw on the collapsible chairs that can be easily stored but open in the large space to be able to have trainings, and just breakout conference spaces on the first floor. For the second floor, this was more of a private office workspace with private office workspace. So as normal people would enter, would enter through there or through the back staircase, and that I decided to organize the area in with how people would access it, as well as the sound. And so more quiet and more individual spaces are all over that side, and the more louder, more team like inducing space on this side. With the extension, I was able to create an outdoor terrace, which can be used for seating, specifically mainly for private seating, and outdoor space to incorporate the outdoors. This is circulation of the second floor. Should we just let them go? This is more of a private space, so it's only for people that are working there, so it's just the pathways. I decided to enhance the little kitchenette area to allow for people to eat at the same time, interact with anyone in the team workspace. I also took advantage of like plants and creating greenery in the area by using that as separations. I was really inspired by the 5th floor at Sasaki. This is the outdoor terrace. I just wanted to incorporate a more outdoor space and incorporate greenery. Although the grass doesn't look green, but whatever. And also another conference space. We also have a private space. There was originally one private space, one small office that was crowded with storage. So I decided to enhance it and make it bigger, but also include another larger storage that's accessed through the conference room. For individual workspace, I want to incorporate a more quiet, enclosed area for individual seating and workspace. For the ground floor, let me go back. The ground floor, I wanted to, since there was barely any windows and we needed to increase the means of egress, we extended the back with having a large glass facade that can allow for maximum natural light. And yeah, it's flipped, but want to incorporate storage and a potential gallery space for any artwork that wants to be shared in the area. Hold up. Again, another circulation path just to show people in the public how they would access this space, and more private people and where they would go compared to anyone that public. For the gallery space, I didn't go in depth on this, but a potential modular, more foldable type of walls, like pin walls, to be able to hang artwork. And this is just a rendering of the outdoor/indoor terrace, underground terrace space. Yeah. So I also wanted to look into how accessible this whole building is to the public, private, and how semi-private. Mainly the second floor is all private for anyone in nonprofit, anyone that's working there from visiting. And the first floor is mainly public with some semi-public, semi-private locations, such as the conference for when people are invited. And the ground floor is mainly semi-private as well as private. These are just some sections of the building. They're starting with the ground floor and going up. I don't know why I have two of them. And then the elevation view from the ramp side that shows both what the terrace and the large facade, underground facade looking. And this is an elevation from the parking space. I also mentioned that this extension in the back takes up 2 parking spaces, but still allows for more space for other parking, as well as the high school parking lot, which we are allowed to use. These are some renderings of the exterior, just showing the view of what the terrace looks like and the whole building. For the idea of the signage, we had the idea of creating a large mural. This isn't exactly what it would look like, but just I got an inspiration that Rishi sent me from a building in Vancouver. And so I just like the idea of having patterns and colors to bring out, to allow for people to recognize the space and bring welcoming people and make a welcoming environment. These are just some more elevation views of the terrace. I also really wanted to incorporate more abstract shape. As you could tell, with each floor has a different size to it, and just makes it unique since the building is very simple. We wanted to incorporate some abstract to it. But more of them. Yeah, thank you. Why something like this? I have the model. Okay, well.
Well, Maryam, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm really excited. Originally, when we found out that we got extra help with you and thinking through our design, I was really pleased because it's one thing to get a building, it's another to kind of design for community and for the purpose of our mission. And I've thought that the way you presented and did the research on what was feasible, what we can do with our building was really important to note, because there's a lot of information to hold. And while we're excited to have this space, it's been really important to have someone else kind of take a look at what's allowable. And I got really excited because you really took into consideration what I keep bringing up time and time again, is modularity, and bringing it into the space to see some of the design choices in a way in which you can break down one big space into purposeful meaning space that allows us to either build community or build relationship with other organizations is really exciting. And the building looks so sexy. It looks so welcoming, right? I had talked about welcoming, but I did not expect this 2-story building to be so wow. And I think to be able to honor Mother Earth by having a more natural extension is was something I didn't consider. I think when we talked about originally like adding an additional bay, I thought, well, it's another 4 walls. But hearing just like a glass element, seeing that terrace and pergola, like I really love. It's much more organic than what I envisioned. And once again, Sasaki and the team just continues to expand my notion or understanding of what design for community looks like, because again, it's traditionally I'm thinking for a structured wall. It's sterile. It's not organic. It's not nature. And you really brought another element that feels in alignment with the work that we do with our indigenous elders. And thank you for incorporating the Chicana into the mural. I think that we do want the building to stand out, but not in slap art in the wall. So I think the way you really approach this project honored the way we want to show ourselves, not just to the community in Revere, but to our audience and our members who take part in our training, who just want a place to chill, but also do deep heart work, social justice work. So thank you.
I agree. I've actually never been to your space, but I've seen it so many times through pictures. But I think that you did an amazing job of like elevating that experience for the potential people, the clients that will be coming through there, because a lot of times, you know, when it comes to nonprofit work, it's a very challenging, you know, experience. Like, you know, you're like really working, like, you know, on the ground doing so much, but to bring, you know, to imagine this space as like, you know, this is like elevating the experience they have for utilizing the space, but also for the community to come in. I think it's a really, really amazing thing that they could potentially experience something this beautiful and like aesthetic and like, oh wow, this is a space y'all have, you know what I mean? And have it be used at its full potential. I really love the use of like outdoor space, because I think that's super important to incorporate into any space, just because we have such like long periods of time without, you know, greens outside, and even just being able to look outside is really important. But yeah, it looks really, really amazing. I was like, I'm so impressed with how much you did. It was like a lot, a lot.
No, I love this, Mariam, so much, this project. This is the first time I'm seeing anything of your project, because I didn't come for the other charrettes, but I'm also like just speechless, especially because I know you since high school, 10th grade. I know your design, and it's like heartwarming seeing how you've evolved all the way from there to here. And I think this is just, oh, this is just so good, Mariam. I'm really excited for you. Yeah. And one question, the model, what material is it? When it fell, it's solid. I thought it was just paper. Oh, that's great. No, yeah, I thought it was paper until it fell, and I was like, oh, that's not paper. Wow. No, but I agree with all you guys been saying. I love the organic and nature feel that you've brought to this space. It just makes it more like welcoming, and also very it gives me a lot of therapeutic, yeah, therapeutic vibes. Yeah, it just gives that like calming, restoring, like kind of, yeah, nurturing the soul type of space. That's the vibe I get, and I love it. So really good job. I'm really proud.
Anyone else or anybody online who have any feedback? Amazing. Well, thank you everybody for attending. This has been recorded and will be shared with you all, and the slide deck as well with all our partners. Thank you so much for coming through and supporting our students and watching their presentations. Have a good day, everybody.